Hello, ladies. My name is Emily Hacken, and we wanted to do this training for all of you guys that may have missed our guide training on November um, 16th, whenever that was, and so that you guys can have some information to refer to, yeah, just in case you missed it or if you needed to refresh. So I'm going to just kind of go through everything. First off, we took our first aid kits, um, and we took them apart and put them back together. And I really want you guys to go ahead and um, if you're leading a trip, take the first aid kit and just open it up, become really familiar with what's inside that kit. Just if you ever needed things, you know where they are. Um, then we talked about our walkie-talkies. So you've probably gotten a chance to use these, but if you haven't, um, we are generally on channel 16 because one of the walkie-talkies won't get off that channel right now. The way to turn it on is you have a button right here. You turn it on, and then these two buttons are your volume. If you need to change channel for some reason, you push on the button, and this is your speaking button, like Roger, Roger, that button. And then you push the power button again, and that'll allow you to change channels. And then, of course, here is your button. Do depress it for 2 seconds at least, and then start talking, and then say over at the end, and then release. That way we have good communication with our walkie-talkies. Reception's about 2 miles or so with this without canyons. So if you're in a narrow slot canyon, they don't work so well. But if you're up on top, they do. All right, our other walkie-talkie was gifted to us by some random people we met. This is called the Rocky-Talkie. We just have one of these. It's the same idea. You turn it on right here with the orange button. And then up here, there's a little toggle that will tell you, that will change channels. So you can get to the channel you want. And then on the side right here is the top button to depress to talk. This is great. You can clip it on. So we love those. Then we have our beacon. We use the InReach Mini beacon. This also has a handy little clip. You can just clip right onto your backpack strap if you're hiking or whatever. So what we want you guys to do, just be familiar with this. You would use this in a situation where you don't have good cell phone coverage. If you do have good cell phone coverage, then use your phones and that should be just fine. But if not, we have the beacon available. If there are two trips on the same day, we'll give the beacon to whoever's in the more at-risk activity. I think that would need to use this. So with the beacon, you turn the button right here, turn it on right here, and it's gonna do its little turning on thing. You have an up and down toggle here, and then on this side you have it'll show you an OK button and a back button. All right, and then also you have, it's hard for you guys to see this here, but it's an SOS button. Now, oh, it woke up. So the SOS button, if this is to use in case of total emergencies, you don't just push this. This is actually covering the button. So you peel it open and pull it down. And there's the button inside. And that's what you would push if you needed search and rescue. These are equipped to have texting options back and forth. But just know for this kind of a training, that's all you just need to do is pull that down. Now, we ask that you, when leading a trip, contact your base commander at the beginning, middle, and end of the trip just to let them know you and your participants are doing okay. If you have just a cell phone, then that's what we ask that you do that by cell phone. If you're using the beacon, we have 3 preset messages on here that are totally free, and we ask that you use those to communicate with your base commander. The first on this unit is called preset message 1, and that means what your base commander will be getting is, we're okay. Second message is preset message 2, which means we're delayed, but okay. Third message is preset message 3, which means we are back at the trailhead and we're okay. All right, so we're gonna have you use number 1 message when you start a trip and when you're in the middle of the trip, and then number 3 when you're back. All right, so in order to send one of these preset messages, and I'm sorry, this will be backwards on the screen, on the video, but we push okay, okay, and it's going to say send preset. I'm going to say okay, so I push that button, And this actually brings up preset message 1. So I'm going to click OK. All right, and then it says send. I click OK. And it says send preset message. I click OK again. OK again. Oh, we have good reception. You'll have a little screen that has a little arrow pointing up, and that's when it's sending your message. It doesn't always send it right away. Usually you have to wait like half hour or something. But anyway, that's the screen you want to get to, and that's how you know you're sending a message. Once it makes that little bleep sound, then I will go push the, there'll be a little arrow, curved arrow, which is the back button. So it's one button down, and I'll just take myself all the way back to the main screen right there. And then I just keep that in my pack until I'm halfway hiking. And then I do the same thing. Pretty much you just select okay, 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 until you get to that arrow. Okay. If you need to send that third message, you do okay, okay, preset, and scroll down to, and then hit okay, 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 to the end. That's how you use the beacon. It's not hard. Now your base commander is going to get a message on their cell phone with GPS coordinates or a link. They click on that from their phone and it'll actually bring up a little map that will show exactly where you are. So that's just kind of how they know and can track you. It's really great. So we do recommend when you do your recons to check your cell phone reception on that type. And if you find gaps or anything large concerning gaps, then request the beacon if you can. You're always welcome to take the beacon on a recon as well to see and test the coverage that you have on a beacon. Sometimes, especially in our canyons, you're not going to get any even beacon coverage. But if you get up on a plateau, you should be able to send the beacon messages okay. So it's good for you to kind of know that as well before heading into a trip. All right, heading into trainings. We wanted you to know that you as a guide have access to many trainings through Mountain Mamas that will help improve your medical skills and also just your regular skills. Medical skills, we ask if you're an assistant guide that you have first aid CPR certification. So if you don't have that yet, go ahead and get that. We need to have that by the end of this year. We have a first aid class being taught by Brian, our medical advisor. He's a physician's assistant. His last class this month or this year will be November 29th and December 1st. It's a 2-part evening class with hands-on. He also teaches this every spring, usually around March, and every fall around September. So if your certification is coming up, then you need to make sure that you sign up for that class. He's the best show in town and also the cheapest at about $33 or so. Otherwise, you can do these classes through American Red Cross, through American Heart Association, through your local fire departments, anything like that. The community centers usually do them the cheapest. So you always have those options. We just ask that you do have an in-person hands-on component to your class. Our medical advisor just didn't like the people who were doing online didn't seem to have much training or remember much of what they did. So we just need you to have some hands-on training for your first aid. Now, if you want to be a lead guide, we ask that you do your wilderness first responder. And we have that training is going on. It's taught by 12 Finger Guides. It's happening between December 18th to February 11th. We already have 9 of you guys signed up for that. And we're so excited for that. It's 72 hours. So it's a big, intense course. It's going to cost about, I think, $275 at least. Mountain Mamas is covering the other $275 because this is over a $500 class. But we really want to make sure you guys have that. So the in-person class or the woofer class has 2 in-person dates where you have to go into class on December 17th and February 11th. Those dates have changed. So those are the new dates. Then you also have 5 2-hour sessions where you're going to go through scenarios, and that's being done at some point during the course that starts from December 17th and goes till December 11th. So those you guys will schedule that after you're in class, and then weekly online classes for those, I think 5 weeks. On Monday evening they'll post a 3 or 4 hour video that you need to watch at sometime during that week, and then it will come with homework and scenarios you'll need to do on your own, and then a quiz that you'll have to complete before the following Monday at noon. So that's the Wilderness First Responder class. Most of the stuff is able to be done now online and at home. And so we're really excited about that option that they're offering for you guys. As far as skills training, we have our guide conferences that we do twice a year in the springtime, March 17th and 18th of 2023. On the 17th, we'll be doing backpacking, survival, and caving skills. And then on the 18th, we'll do cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, downhill, and snowboarding skills on our winter day. These courses are about 3 hours long, and we try and keep the location pretty central and teach you everything you need, most of the things you're going to need to pass it off. Some activities you actually need to do a little bit follow-up skills after the course, but everyone's welcome to do that course and always refresh. Some skills you guys are actually going to need to pass off every year. So you can either do that at the guide conference or during that activity that's being done that year. For example, if you need to pass off rafting, rafting safety, you can actually do that before the end of a rafting trip. You just need to let your lead guide know that that's what you want to do. The other conference is in this fall, and that's going to be September 15th and 16th. On 15th is the ropes day, so we have rock climbing, rappelling, canyoneering. And then on the 16th is our water day, rafting, kayaking, canoeing, and paddleboarding as well. So if you want to join us for those, we'd love to have you guys and get your skills brushed up on your skills or learn new skills. We also have our canyoneering skills class that anyone who wants to go on a canyoneering trip needs to do, and that's March 11th and September 9th. And you need to do one of those every single year to pass off your canyoneering skills. All right, so those are the trainings offered to you as a guide. Now, I wanted to do some information on safety, just so that you kind of generally know that we have some safety protocols that you should be aware of, and to help you I don't know, reassure the gals in your group that we have these going on to keep our trip safe. The first thing is every trip has a base commander, whether it's a little hike or whether it's a multi-day expedition. There's always someone who's not going to be on the trip, who's available, usually back home, that will have a full email list of all the participants, including their emergency contacts and medical information, and then also a trip report that our guide has filled out so that they have access to all the information that's happening on that trip. The vice commander is someone that family members who of the participants can communicate with, and if they have any questions or concerns. The guide and base commander of every trip are emailed prior to a trip, the list of participants and their trip report. And so they will have that on their phone. So as a guide, when you grab and circle up everyone at the beginning of a trip, you can actually look through your phone on that email, and it'll tell you everybody that you should have there on that trip, plus all their medical and everything else that you should be aware of. The base commander is being checked in with by our guide at the beginning of the trip, the middle of the trip, and the end of the trip. And this is very, very important to contact your base commander and let them know how everything's going. And then the base commander is also there to contact families if you have a delay in your trip, or if for some reason you need search and rescue. We haven't had to use search and rescue, but we've had to definitely contact families on delays in trips. So anyway, that's what you have as an option. Now, our trainings, that's another way that we help improve our safety skills. So all our lead and assistant guides have received medical and skills training, like we talked about. And then our third thing is that we have first aid kits on all our trips, and you guys have been trained in how to use that. So those are 3 ways that we can make sure we keep our group safe and our women safe. Now, guide trips. We wanted to let you know on how to guide a trip. So before a trip, you need to go on a recon. Every trip needs to have a reconnaissance, so you've checked the trip out beforehand. If you're doing a local trip as an assistant guide, if it's a summertime activity, you need to have checked out that trip up to a month in advance. So we don't want you to be doing that 3 months in advance. Or possibly the day before. We want to give our people, some time that you've checked out the activity, maybe a week before or a few days before, but you know the conditions on the trail before you even take people there. Now, if you're doing a winter activity, we ask that you do your recon 2 weeks or less before the trip, because winter conditions on trails change, and we need to know whether we're snowshoeing, doing microspikes, or just being able to hike that trail or that activity. The office, before you do every activity, will set up a Slack channel. For local trips, it'll set it up 2 weeks ahead of time. For beginner and extreme and family trips and international trips, it will set up the Slack channel 4 weeks before that trip, just so we have more time to kind of organize everything on Slack. We'll post also the information of that trip on the Slack channel. So usually we cut and paste that from the trip sign up that the women, they've already signed up online, and it has a little blurb about that activity. We just cut and paste that and put that on the Slack channel. It includes the trip information, links to the trailheads, gear lists, and itineraries. So all that should already be on the Slack channel. Then also the office is going to be confirming participants. So we'll have a little blurb and we'll make sure that we have a good, accurate list of your participants start by the day before your trip. Sometimes things even change the day of, but we want to make sure that your list is most accurate. And then we also will organize carpooling. So you don't have to worry about that. We try and get that done within 2 to 4 days before a trip and just make sure you know what groups are becoming and who to look out for at a trailhead. Then after you've done the recon and the office has updated the Slack channel, you're going to be, we want you to get on the Slack channel and now update the information from your recon trip. So you may say, oh, I found out that the bridge is out at this place, or we're going to need to wear more winter clothes or more summer clothes or whatever. Maybe we need to have boots instead of running shoes because now I found out, there's slushy on the trail, or the trail's more muddy or something like that. So yeah, please put even pictures, any information from your recon that would be helpful for your participants. And then we need you to fill out the trip report. You'll be emailed a blank trip report. And that's a Google Doc. So you can upload it and the office can see it as well. And we ask that you fill out the first column of that trip report. If you can, about a week before your trip. It just makes it a lot easier for us. Now the trip report, we'll have a picture of that I'll email that out so you kind of have access to what it looks like. But essentially, in fact, let me see if I can get this screen share for you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you so you can kind of see what our trip reports look like. This is a filled out example trip report. So you can see at the top we have a date, our activity, where we're going to be and the date. And then you're going to fill out this first column here. So we have a proposed date, the activity, the location, the trailhead. We ask that you actually have a link or something on Google Maps so that your base commander can just click on that and know exactly what trailhead you're starting at. And then our route, we ask that you you actually put the miles that you're going to be doing or the length of time, just in distance or whatever on here, including a link. If you're doing a hike, have the All Trails link on here, which is complete with a map. If you don't have an All Trails link for your activity, you're doing maybe paddleboarding or kayaking or something like that, then just put the route that you're going to be doing, or if you're going to go to multiple trails, put that all here so that your base commander knows where to find you. Also, it's very helpful if you have your 3-word location. This is an app that you can download. It's called What's 3-word. It's a red icon with lines in it. Essentially, if you ever had to call search and rescue and they needed to come find you, there's grids in the whole world, and every grid, a little plot of land has 3 words that are connected to it that will tell the search and rescue exactly your location. So it's a nice thing to also have that, know that, okay, I'm going to be on this grid. Grid is, I don't know, yellow elephant banana or something. It'll be something like that, but your 3 words. And that way, if base command had to contact search and rescue, they would know whatever plot, and it might be several, of course, but where you'll be if they had to call search and rescue. So you can throw that in there as well. And then we have our lead guide and assistant guides here. So we ask that every trip as ratios. So hiking is 1 lead guide to 8 participants. If you have rock climbing, rappelling, it's more like 1 to 4, where water sports are generally 1 to 5, 1 to 6. So we need to have a lead guide for so many participants. And then if you have assistants, that's wonderful. Assistants also count as guides, so that allows you to take more people. So make sure you put those in here as far as you know. If you don't know these, then don't worry about it. The office will make sure they're assigned and put in there. The time frame of your activity is where you put in all your times that you're estimating that your activity is going to go. Then we go down to time for base commander to contact your emergent to your families in case of emergency, we set that at 2 hours after you're supposed to be off the mountain or off your activity. So right here we have our activity. We're supposed to be back at the trailhead at noon. So our base commander is contacting people if they have not heard from you at all by 2 p.m. and letting them know that something's happening and we're being delayed. Now, this means that they haven't heard from you at the beginning of the trip or the middle of the trip. Like they've had radio silence. If at some reason during your trip you're like you foresee that you're going to be delayed, then they can push that time back. This is essentially just kind of like a check that we have that if they have not heard from you, this is when they need to start worrying. And then the same thing for base commander search and rescue. That's 2 hours later. This is if they've had no contact from you from the beginning of your activity, then they will be, sorry, battery's getting a little low. If they haven't heard from you the whole time, then this is when they're actually calling search and rescue and using all that information. We just always want to have this for if something really goes bad, we have a backup plan. We haven't had to use this, but let's hope we never do. But it's there just in case. All right, then we have the number of participants and guides. You won't usually know this yet, so the office will be filling that out. You can see that you do participants first, then guides second. All right, waivers signed. This is, we make sure all our women are signed waivers before they go on trips. Every once in a while, we have maybe someone sign up for a trip last minute and they didn't sign a waiver. So we'll print off one and send that with you guys and have them sign that at the trailhead. If for some reason someone shows up to your trip and they have not signed a waiver, they're actually not allowed on the trip. What we can do is just say, hey, we're hiking this trip, are doing this activity. You're welcome to do it next to us, but not with us. So if something happens to you, we are not legally responsible for you. So you just need to clarify that with them. We've had people show up with children, with guys, whatever, and that's what we just kind of have to tell them, is you can hike or be near us, but not legally part of our activity. All right, special medical needs of any of the participants. We will fill that out as the office. You will not need to fill that out. And this is just for your information to know the people on your trip. So we will fill this out after you've done your initial trip report and just let you know, okay, we've updated your trip report. These are the medical needs of the people on your trip. And it just helps you do look at this before the trip. We have a lot of asthmatics and we have some diabetics too, and people with all sorts of allergies to medications and things. So you should be aware of these things. We do have one woman who has anaphylactic exercise-induced asthma, and you need to be aware of that and check in with her and make sure she brought her EpiPen. Same with your people who have asthma, that they brought their inhalers, things like that. So this is something you can ask at the trailhead, or if you're a really awesome guide, you can actually text them the day before, and we can get you that. You'll have that information as well. Transportation, carpooling, we always just carpool for legal reasons, actually. So we just meet everyone. Mountain Mamas is not legally responsible for people's transportation to and from activities. Menu, usually that's going to say snacks on your own, but if we ever do an overnight, that'll also include full menus of our activity, our meals and things, because we need to be aware of people's food allergies and kind of stay on top of that. The weather, we do ask that you get the weather and put that in there at least a week in advance, so you can kind of be aware if a storm is coming through, and you can kind of watch those things as well. Unforeseen events, we ask that you type in actually here things that you foresee could happen on the trip: falls, abrasions, hypothermia, heat stroke, all those kind of things. This just shows that you're, as a guide, keeping an eye out for possible hazards and things like that. And then emergency evacuation. This is how you plan to get someone out of a trip. So usually it's going to be something like carry out and call 911, or carry out and call search and rescue if I don't have cell phone reception, things like that. But we just want you to kind of be aware of how you would evacuate someone if there was concerns. And at the end, any tips and tricks that you find interesting that you would like to be included in your trip report. All right, so that is your pre-trip report. I'm going to just talk about the post-trip report just because we're already here. So after you get done with the trip, 1 or 2 days after, we ask that you fill out the post-trip report. A lot of it's going to be this no change, no concerns, but we ask that you do fill out every single box for legal reasons. So like here on the route, I had to hike from the winter trailhead due to construction. There's some changes, or maybe one of our guides was sick, and so another person assisted, another assistant guide assisted. Maybe time frame I thought the trip would only, when I did the recon, it took 2 hours, but when I took the ladies, it took 4 hours because they take a zillion pictures, whatever. So make adjustments there. So right here, we contacted the base commander to let them know we were delayed, um, or let our emergency contacts know. Now, as far as contacting emergency contacts, if the women have their own cell phone reception and can contact their people, that's great. Just have them do that. But if you're in a situation where, say, like I was on a hike to Silver Lake and I had my cell phone was able to contact our base commander, but other people's cell phones weren't. So I contacted him and told him to contact the family members and just let him know we were running an hour or two behind. And he could do that pretty easily. So that's kind of when you would use that. Waivers signed. We talked about that. If you have to do a paper signature, medical needs. If anyone did, Emily had a mild asthma attack. We used her in inhaler and was fine. That's great. You can write those things. This is where you write that. Transportation, everything menu. I brought donuts. And so if I needed to make notes of anyone having gluten allergies or anything, I would have that on there as well. Our weather, we got rained on instead of the sunny weather we were hoping for. And then unforeseen events, say like I had an asthma, you could put I had an asthma attack, took medicine, was fine. Nancy slipped on the rocks at the falls and had a slight abrasion on her right leg. First aid kit, first aid performed. And you use, write what you used out of the first aid kit and put that in there. That helps us to replenish the first aid kits. And we find that very helpful. All right. So there you go. And then right here, any other tips that you found on your trail or your activity, whatever it is, go ahead and put them here. We actually use this information when we file our trip report online that people, just the general public, have access to. And it really helps us have good trail information. And then also if you are leading or anyone's leading the same trip in 6 months or a year, we just can use all the information that you gathered to keep a most updated trail trip report. And that's pretty awesome. All right. So there's your trip reports. So fill those out about a week or so in advance of a trip would be very, very helpful. And then you can just Google share it, or you can also email it to the Mountain Mama website or Mountain Mama email, mtnmamasutah@gmail.com. And then also you will need to pick up before a trip your first aid kit. And Marilyn and I both have these, so just grab them from our house. We'll also send you with some walkie-talkies and a beacon if you need it on your trip. So make sure you pick up those 3 things. All right, so that's before your trip. Now during a trip, when you get there at the trailhead and you're going to do your thing, we ask that you circle up. Get all your ladies, round them up, and kind of do introductions. And I usually like to ask, what's your name and how familiar are you with this activity, whether it's hiking or kayaking or rafting or rappelling? That gives you an idea of who your beginners are and experienced people and can help you kind of navigate through that as well. Then I also use that time to introduce all the guides. I'm the lead guide. So-and-so is our assistant guide. You know what we look like. You should be given a red bandana and do wear those or attach them to your packs or something so you're identifiable during a trip. So especially our new women may not know that you're a guide. And so that's helpful for them. So wear those on our trips and use that when you're introducing yourself. Then you're gonna, after introducing everybody, then just tell them about your activity. Say it's this many miles, we're expecting it to take this long, blah, blah, blah. And then any concerns that you might have for the trip. I noticed that the bridge is out. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to do a little hike around and blah, 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 or anything that you might foresee as concerning, or doing kayaking trip and we need to leave at this certain time, otherwise we start getting headwinds or whatever like that. So just let them know any of the concerns on your trip. And then you're going to send a message to your base commander and say, all right, we're headed out, we're ready to go. I like to have, if we're doing a hike or something similar, I like to have the lead guide in the very front and then your assistant guide at the end. If you have multiple assistant guides, you can put them in the middle and then give them each a walkie-talkie. Whoever's in the back of your activity needs to have the first aid kit. If you have multiple first aid kits, that's great. But just know that if you're putting someone at the back, they need to have the first aid kit because that's usually where all the problems are. Now, if you don't feel comfortable and as a lead guide want to have the first aid kit, that's fine. Just use your walkie-talkies and keep your group pretty tight. So if you had problems at the back, you can get there pretty easily. Now, as far as pacing, you need to keep your group together. If you're doing a hike or something and you look back and you're all by yourself, you're going too fast. So you have a good pace if everyone is with you, including your last person, so that's a good pace for your group. I know, and usually your fast people are pretty irritated. That's how you know you have a good pace for your group. Um, I like to have my slower people after you've been hiking about 10, 15 minutes, we'll do a pause, usually take off coats because everyone always starts warm. If you tell them be bold, start cold, that usually keeps you from having to do too much gear changing and clothing adjustments into the trail. But yeah, and then I also use that time to kind of start adjusting my pacing. If I've got gals who are pretty slow, I will put them actually in the front and rotate them through. That helps your troop actually hike a little bit faster when you have the slower people in front. They're less demoralized and more encouraged. And then I usually have the lead guide hike number 2. And then rotate people through. But then your lead guide is right there to offer directions and things like that. But you can help, that usually helps to keep your group better for longer trips. These are like 2, 4, 6 hour trips. All right. Also, we would like you to take pictures. Do take pictures. I know that may seem kind of silly, but some of our bike rides, it's hard to remember to take pictures. So at least get a picture at the trailhead or one at the end. I usually like to do things at the beginning when everyone's clean and happy, because who knows what happens on trips. So, but make sure you take some pictures on the trip because we use those in our trip reports and we really appreciate them. Especially if you have take this trail, not this trail, or these are good landmarks, anything that you might need to have in a trip report as well that make it easier for you or someone else to lead that trip later in the future. Then halfway through your activity, we want to send a message to our base commander and let them know we're okay. And then do know that getting to the top of like a mountain peak is optional, but getting home is mandatory. So if your group is struggling, it's your prerogative as a guide to say, you know what, we're just calling it. I want to make sure I get you back all home and safe. So yeah, just wanted you guys to be aware of that. Injuries, if you have injuries on the trail, if it's a minor injury, you want to perform your first aid. So stop and take care of whatever you need to do. Then document everything on an incident report, which is included in your first aid kit, and then photograph the injury. Okay, if you have a major injury, we're going to do the same thing. We'll perform our first aid. We're going to call for help and 911, get that going right away, plan the evacuation, and then photograph our injuries and document everything on an incident report and a SOAP note. So I kind of wanted you to kind of be aware of the paperwork that is involved in a first aid kit. So every first aid kit is completed with, let's see, here we go, an incident report. So incident reports, you would fill this out if something was a little concerning. So if you just had someone who just had a splinter, I don't worry about that. And you had to use the tweezers out of the first aid kit, I wouldn't worry about that. Or just like a little cut with a Band-Aid, I'll leave that up to you. This is for if there's anything that happens on your trip, you're like, oh my gosh, if, I'm just a little worried. If a gal fell down or something and hit her head and said she was fine, but you're like, oh no. Or yeah, we had a gal posing for a photo and slipped and fell on a rock and hurt her ankle a little bit, but said she was fine, didn't want any medical. These are things that you want to fill out incident reports for. All right. If you wake up after a trip and be like, oh my gosh, I'm worried about so-and-so, then you should fill out an incident report. Okay. So on an incident report, these you put the name of the person involved, the date you're filling out the report, if it happens to be a day or so later, reported by you as the guide, and you would write lead guide in there. Incident number, don't worry about that. We will take care of that on the office end. Incident type, say we had a fall or whatever happened on their trip, bike crash, whatever. The location, where that happened. Say like that was done at Big Cottonwood Canyon on this trail, and then specific area would be like 1 mile in at this location, wherever. Then incident description, just write what happened, everything that happened, and then the name of the role of individuals, and do include their phone numbers too, if we ever have to contact them after the fact. Same with witnesses. We had a gal have a fall on a caving trip before we even got into the cave. So we have a witness that was with her when she fell. So that's important to have the witnesses' phone numbers as well and their names. If they were transported to a medical facility, put that in there. If you had to file a police report for some reason, it was an accident or something else was involved, you've got all that information there. And then follow up is just what you did. So perform first aid. If you offered first aid and they refused, if you said you need to go to the hospital and be checked out and they refused, do document all that in here. Or if you're like, I called them the next day or 2 days later, whatever, and they said they were fine, and blah, 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 but put all that here. Then when you're done with this, then you have them sign it, and then you sign it as the witness, or whoever your witness was of the activity. And I had that on there. So this is our incident reports. Um, Actually, if you are the one who fills out the trip, then we want to have you sign this. And there'll be a front and back to this form in each of the first aid kits. So feel free, use it. Crack it open when you, usually I think when you're opening the first aid kit to help somebody, then take out your incident report at the same time. There's a pencil in every first aid kit, and this is folded up next to in a little Ziploc bag next to the first aid book that's in your first aid kits. All right. Now, if you have a really bad activity accident, we've had to fill out a couple of these. You will fill out a SOAP note. A SOAP note is when you are having to monitor someone over time, say like they hit their head, or we had a gal have a fall and just seemed really wacky. And so we wanted to kind of watch her for a little bit. Or we had a gal crash her bike and had an ankle, was in a lot of pain. So when we're monitoring somebody over time, if you're calling search and rescue, if you're doing an evacuation and things, this is the note that you also fill out in addition to your incident report. Your lead guides will learn how to fill these forms out in the Wilderness First Responder course, but we just want all of you guys to be aware, because a lot of times if there's something happening, your lead guide is the one doing that first aid and you're the one as an assistant filling out this paper. So just be aware of what it looks like. This is also going to be in that same little Ziploc with the first aid book and the incident report. So you just take it out and write and fill it out. So we've got our patient name. This triangle is something cool that you will learn about as a first responder. Then we have the date, age, gender of our person. Subjective is just what happened. What's their complaint? I crashed my bike and now my knee hurts, you know. Then we have our vital signs. These are things we're going to be checking them over time. So time, what happened, you know, are they alert oriented? They know what's going on. You can check a heart rate here or on their wrist for a minute and then put that there. RR is respiratory rate. Check the respirations and how fast they're breathing. Skin would be pink, warm, dry, or wet, clammy, pale, ashen, any of those kind of things. So you're writing that over time. All right, usually we monitor people if something's really bad every 5 minutes. If not so much, then every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, whatever you're going to need to do during your activity. But this shows that you're watching somebody. So make sure you're documenting this throughout your activity. Patient exam is if we had a gal have a fall, then I say, okay, she has abrasions on her elbows and her right knee. What you can do, we have this cool little person here. And so you can do, you'll be able to mark the injuries and things like that. But yeah, patient exam is anything you're noticing physically that's going on with them. And that's where you get to write your stuff. Pertinent negatives means things that is not happening. Say like they hit their head, but they are not hallucinating. They're not seeing lights. They're not throwing up, anything, you know, those are your pertinent negatives. Sample is just a way to kind of do a physical assessment. So you just fill out all these things, allergies, medications. These are things that you're asking the person or filling out if you know them and they can't answer. All right. Then your assessment is any injuries that are happening. So on my little person, say like I have someone at a bike crash and they have an abrasion on their forehead, I'll put, this is number 1. I do a little 1 with a circle on my guy's head. And then say like they have an elbow abrasion on the left elbow, I'll put number 2, elbow on the little person. And then their right knee also got hurt. So number 3. And so that pertains to the assessment 1, 2, 3 on there. So number 1 will say forehead abrasion. Number 2, left elbow abrasion. Number 3, right knee abrasion. And then on the plan, you'll follow up. So number 1, what are you going to do for that right forehead abrasion? Okay, I cleaned it and left it open to air, or I cleaned it and it's dry, or I covered it with a bandage, you know, or we put it a sling, you know, we think it might be broken, so we, you know, splinted, whatever. But that every injury has a link to, or just confusion. And so our plan, you put a 1 over the head for confusion. And then on the 1, we're going to monitor for confusion and take them in. We want to take them to the hospital or whatever like that to get checked out. Anyway, so these boxes are just extra boxes to help monitor people. And then your evacuation plan is you're filling this out as well, trying to figure out what you're going to do about this person. Are they able to walk out? Do I need to call a helicopter? A litter is, are we going to be carrying them out on like a backboard or something we've made of, whether an official one that search and rescue is bringing or one that we're making ourselves. Location, just all the information about where you're at and all that information. Any special requests if you feel like, oh my gosh, my person's going to need oxygen when search and rescue gets here. They need oxygen. They need to be warmed up. These are the things that we're going to be asking search and rescue for. Then the plans for the messenger group is if I have to send a group off to go for help, then they're going to go, I'm sending 2 people. They're going to take this trail and they're going to go to this trailhead and make a call. All right. Then the plans for the main group, the rest of us, or 6 people, are staying at this location with our victim. And we have day kit supplies for the day, or we have some things if we had to spend the night, but that's kind of how you'd fill that out. And then the alternate plan for the main group, if we, for some reason, aren't safe in our current location while we're waiting for search and rescue, we're going to go down the canyon to this meadow or in this cave or whatever. But this is kind of your plan that you're talking about and making sure you have this. It's great to have this already filled out before you call search and rescue so you can kind of let them know what your plans are. All right, and then in here it says calling for help. This is just information on how to use the beacon. So that's there for you. So that's your SOAP note. You kind of have a basic ideas of how to fill that out. All right, and your incident reports. Okay, so hopefully you're fine and have no incidents on your trip and you had a wonderful trip. And so after the trip, when we get back, we send a message to our base commander, that third message, just to say we are back at the trailhead and everything's okay. We like to have a different message than the regular one, just so they know the activity is ending and that they can be aware. If for some reason you're sending your messages by cell phone, also do a timestamp. So back at the trailhead, 5:50, because for some reason, if your cell phone doesn't send that message right away, your base commander will know and have an idea of when, if it doesn't send a message for like an hour later, then, and that's when they get it, they'll be like, oh, okay, so I can kind of see what time you were doing things and can be aware of that. Then it is your responsibility as a guide to post photographs of your activity. So at least get one, and we usually do it on we do it on the Slack channel through Google Photos. So make sure you have that app and just find a picture, do a link, select a photo and then select link it and then select share. Please do that so other women can also share their photos and then put that on the Slack channel as well. And then the women have access to their photos. And then a couple days after, you want to fill out your post-trip report that we already kind of covered. So that's how to lead a trip. We like to have you guys assistants do locals so you kind of know what's going on first to prep you for if you ever want to be a lead guide because you're going to have to do a little bit more. But the same process is the same for assistant versus a lead guide if you are the one in charge of the trip. So we just kind of want to get you in the habit of good trip leading skills so that when you do the bigger stuff, it's not so crazy. It seems like no big deal. All right. So that concludes our guide training. We're so glad to have you guys be our guides for this year of 2023. We're just honored to have you. And we know this is all volunteer. And we're so grateful. The benefits of being an assistant guide is you get to sign up for any trips without waiting lists or lotteries for anything you're qualified for. So if you're a rappelling guide, you can go on any rappelling trip you want to. Hopefully with caveats that if we have 30 assistant guides, we probably need to only have some of you guys. So, or usually what we like to do is just do multiple activities in that day. So we'll have a morning group and an afternoon group. So we really need you guys. The more assistants and lead guides we have, the more trips we can lead and the safer our trips are. So we're super grateful. And then if you want to ever be a lead guide, the lead guides get tipped. And they're the only ones that get financially compensated. So we're super grateful for them and all their hard work because they do a lot of hard work to do that. Also know in the future, we are hoping to eventually have a process where you guys will be able to be hired out as private guides, as Mountain Mamas is going to have a for-profit section. Right now we're nonprofit, but we also have an LLC set up that we might be able to do actual guiding trips, and you guys as lead guides will be able to be hired out for real guide wages instead of just what we do with tips for trips. So just know that that's something that we're hoping to do in the future, is also provide more opportunities for you to use your expertise and get paid for it. So we're so grateful for everything that you guys do, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.